Rivalry week is upon us. Yes, that's a little bit harder to say than what you think. Rivalry week. We already have an Auburn, Alabama Iron Bowl preview that you must check out. We already have an Egg Bowl, Ole Miss and Mississippi State preview that you must check out. And of course, the slate's not just on Saturday this week. The Friday slate is also filled with bangers. It's basically a DJ Khaled concert. But today we're going to talk here on Crain and Company. Make sure you're subscribed. We're almost to 200,000. Blaine, how many subs we got? We're at what? 193?
Pause. Photo
7,
shoot.
8?
We are in real time. Real time.
Not the fake
we
time.
We are at 193.65.
All right. Let's get those numbers up. Let's get to 200K. Let's get to 200K before we kick off. We got Texas A&M going to play Texas in a massive game. Now, I will say this, David Cohn, former Michigan quarterback, Blaine Crain, former Western State, Colorado wide receiver. This game would be even more interesting, right, if Texas did not already have those 3 losses. Texas A&M is in the college football playoff. At this point, it's just a matter of getting to the SEC championship game, which we know there's a lot riding on this one as well to automatically clinch that bad boy. But Blaine, before we get into it, give me the line, give me the total.
Right now, the line is open up at -2.5. I'm seeing it some places go up to 3.5, and I'm even seeing it some places at 4. Open up around total around 50.5, and I'm seeing that at 51.5.
And
for A&M?
For A&M, correct.
Yeah, A&M.
Yeah, not for Texas.
Again, guys, we've had the discussion. Can Texas find a way to get in the college football playoff? You're going to need basically an act of God and or Congress to find a way to get in there. I don't think it's going to happen, but Texas would love nothing more than to beat Oklahoma, which they've already done, and then take out an A&M team that is undefeated, and this game is in Austin. A hell of a matchup. I cannot wait to watch it. There's a lot to get to here in terms of, who can do what, who will try and do what. But Cone, I want to start with you. A&M has shown that, and nobody's perfect, but there are some vulnerabilities there. They're playing their ass off right now. I don't think anybody can argue that. But what is the one thing, if you're a Texas player, coach, fan, administrator, mascot, whatever, that Texas needs to do in order to have a chance to take down the number 3 team in the country?
Yeah, well, take care of the football is what I would say. And then being at home, I think, is going to help that. And also, I just want us to pause and just say here, in the 2 editions that we've gotten of this game, this renewed rivalry since Texas joined the SEC, that the stakes were already going to be as high as possible with the hatred for these 2 programs. But last year, they were playing for an opportunity to send one of these teams to the SEC championship game. That ended up being Texas. Now we're going to play for an opportunity to not just send one of these teams to the SEC championship game, but to lock in college football playoff berths. And I just think that it's hilarious to me that if you had said at the beginning of the year, when we get to this game, one of these teams is going to be undefeated, the other one's going to be a 3-loss team trying to play spoiler, everyone would have taken Texas, right? Even though we weren't necessarily on the Arch Manning is going to be the greatest player since Tim Tebow trained, I think we still would have said, look, Texas has proven more these last 2 years going to back-to-back college football playoffs, but instead it's their opportunity to play spoiler against Texas A&M. And look, as great as Texas A&M is, and they're the undefeated team, that line Blaine just said is under a field goal, and that's for a reason. So I can't wait for this game.
Blaine, when we look at Marcel Reed, the quarterback for Texas A&M, if you've lived under a rock or you just landed on this planet, we've seen him continue to progress, not only physically, right, using his legs, keeping his eyes down the field when he's improvising outside of the pocket, being able to be utilized in the run game and starting to get smarter as a runner, but the mental aspect too. I mean, you go back and look at the way he played in that first half of the South Carolina game and then the way he played in the second half. Obviously, this dude is not soft mentally. He is able to compartmentalize. He is able to reset. He is able to refresh and restart. And they may need that in this game because regardless of whether Texas makes the college football playoff or not, which is a very low chance they will, they're not going to play in the SEC championship game. This would be a nice add-on to the end of the year. And they're going to be flying their ass around on defense. But you got to don't you just have to make Marcel Reed beat you from the pocket? I mean, he can do it. And the scariest part about A&M is he can do it without throwing the ball 10 yards down the field. You throw a bubble screen or a now screen or a slant to KC Concepcion. I know Craver's been beat up, but they've had other guys start to come on. It is just amazing to me the growth we've seen. But if you keep him in the pocket, that's got to give you your best chance, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, I think we all know that Texas is not going to make the playoffs even with this win, but I don't know if Texas's players know that. I don't know if Steve Sarkisian knows that. So I guarantee you Texas is going to come out and play hard in this football game. It comes down to me with Marcel Reed. He never panics. Usually I've always associated Texas A&M and panicking, right? Those two things. I mean, it's peanut butter and jelly. They've always gone together. But now that's not the case. Marcel Reed is the best havoc quarterback in college football, in my opinion. And when it breaks down and everything goes to shit, that's when Texas A&M really rises. And my thing, if you're Texas, is this. What does A&M really want to do? They want to run the football. You have two legitimate backs. That offensive lineup's been playing great this year, and that's going to set up what the play action. So I do think your best chance for Texas on defense is to turn him as much as you can into a pure pocket passer in the quarterback. What you can have happen is that you do get a Texas A&M team, the 3rd and 5 plus, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, right? And everybody's covered in the back end, but you let Marcel get out of the pocket, break a couple tackles, and end up getting a first down. You have to keep him corralled in the pocket, make him beat you through the air. Look, and he can do that. All right, he can do that, but he can do the other things a lot better. So I think I agree with what you're saying. If you're Texas A&M's defense, that is going to how you're going to have to strategize.
You're talking about Texas's defense.
Texas's defense, yes. When you go against an offense like this.
Well, and a lot of it is discipline in pass rush, and even for a guy, and I try and tell as many people about this is like a guy like Colin Simmons, right? Who we know is uber talented coming off the edge, who we know is an athletic freak, laterally can move. You still have to be disciplined in your pass rush, right? You can't just go out there and over rush a guy, rush past a guy, because Marcel will step up, whether that be to run or whether that be to throw. But it's where you really see that athleticism take effect is when Marcel does leave the pocket. You have guys that have a chance, or at least a guy that has a chance to be able to run him down and match or get close to that speed to be able to cause problems. But when you look at this A&M offense, and I'm going to get to Texas's offense because I think Texas's offense has a decent advantage in this game against A&M. A&M really doesn't have a ton of weaknesses, but if you could say there may be some flaws, I think on the defensive side of the ball, especially when you look at some of the numbers that have been given up the past 4 or 5 games, you can score against this team. But if you're A&M on offense, getting back to establishing that run and not living in 3rd and 7 and 3rd and 8, because if you go back to that first half against South Carolina, a lot of the turnovers happen on obvious passing down. So we know that staying on schedule is incredibly important, but when you're playing a defense, Conan, and you've played against defenses like this that are super athletic and can get to you, and look, Pete Kwiatkowski, he's going to bring some stuff. Right, he's not going to sit there and just give you vanilla ice cream the whole time. He's gonna show you some things. But I'm very interested to see if A&M can stay on schedule running the ball, so you can get in those 2nd and 3s, in those 3rd and 1s, and then take your play action shots down the field to get some explosives to open up the underneath, the quick game, the hitches, even digs and the intermediate and things like that.
Well, I'm glad you brought up the first half of the South Carolina game, because that's what I wanted to recap for a moment. They found themselves in such a hole for 2 reasons. One, South Carolina's stars showed up and were playing great football at the exact same time that Texas A&M was shooting themselves in the foot with uncharacteristic mistakes. Now, the Dylan Stewart strip sack fumble, right? Like, that is force. That's a great player coming off the edge and force it. Marcel Reed missing every throw, and the few throws that he makes, the wide receivers drop, and the defense not being able to tackle in open space. Those problems we saw in the first half, those were the self-inflicted wounds that we hadn't seen from Texas A&M. They are not going to do that again in this game, which means you need the Dylan Stewart off the edge type variety to force Texas A&M into those problems. I think Texas can do that. We saw them win Red River that way, forcing 3 turnovers from John Mateer. So Texas on defense has to force the issue. But then also on the offensive side of the ball, look, we said in the Georgia recap that that game was not on Arch Manning. That loss was not on Arch Manning. I was seeing him go from 2nd, 3rd, 4th progression reads better than I'd seen him do all year. And now he's come. I know this was Arkansas, bottom of the barrel in the SEC and all that. Defense can't stop anyone, but still, that's an SEC opponent. That's an old school rivalry, Texas and Arkansas. There's hate there. And he's come coming off a performance where he's the first Texas quarterback in the history of the program to throw a touchdown, catch a touchdown, and run a touchdown. So the confidence has got to be at an all-time high for him. Can that translate on the field against a Texas A&M defense that we've all admitted has gotten better and better and better throughout the year from that win that we saw against South Bend early in the year?
Yeah, and look, we can sit here and break down schemes and talk about personnel, Blaine, and all this stuff, and we're going to do that. You have to do that. We want our audience to win the water cooler. We want you to be aware of everything that's going on. But let's make no mistake. This is a game just like every other game, but especially ones like this that is won and lost by the dudes up front. That's what it's going to come down to. Can you line up and run the ball when you have to? Can you line up and stop the run when you have to? If I know on 1st and 10, whether it's zone read, whether it's some sort of gap scheme run that I'm getting that and I can get you in 2nd 8, can I continually do that to force you in situations where I know what you're going to do? And throughout the season, I do think we have to say that A&M has been the more physical team. I mean, I've got the rushing numbers pulled up right here. A&M's averaging 5 yards a carry. Texas is averaging 3.7. A&M's leading rusher is Reuben Owens. He has 570 yards. Their second leading rusher, Marcel Reed, has 395 yards. Their third leading rusher, Le'Veon Moss, has 389 yards. Hell, Amari Daniels has got 216, and Jamarian Morrow has 179. Compare that with Texas. Their leading rusher has 442 yards. It's Quintravian Wisner, who's a good back, right? We know he's been beat up a little bit. Their second leading rusher, while it's a quarterback like it is A&M, Arch Manning only has 191. C.J. Baxter only has 186. Jarrett Gibson only has 152, which means that you don't have to be a mathematical genius to figure out that Texas A&M's top 4 rushers, right, when you look at it, combine that and compare that to what Texas has, it's not even close. So A&M has been the more physical team from a domination standpoint, but that doesn't mean that that's going to happen in Austin on Friday night. Yes, I said Friday night when this game is played. So at the end of the day, who's got that dog in them the most when it matters the most? And it's hard to sit here, and we're going to do our predictions. We're going to put that out Wednesday as we normally do. But can Texas answer the physicality with that young offensive line that we've been talking about and everybody's been talking about with what A&M has done? Because let's face it, A&M's been tougher.
Yeah, and I will say this. So I think A&M's been the more physical team this year for sure. But A&M also didn't have Ohio State, Georgia, or Oklahoma on that schedule. You got to look through A&M's that have had somewhat of an easier, if you want to put that in air quotes, easier SEC schedule. That's why if A&M loses this game, they're not making the SEC championship. My big thing for this is if you're Texas, you need to be as Michigan as possible in this football game. You need to turn into the Fighting David Cones. All right? That is, we're going to run it right at you, right? I don't care if it's with the running back, it's with Arch Manning. We're going to get the ball out quick. We're going to get a lot of play actions, a lot of boots, and we're going to hold the ball as long as we possibly can. Texas wins this game if they double up A&M when it comes to time of possession. Do not get into a shootout with these guys, all right? You might think you have a good gun, but I promise you, I mean, these guys are Lockheed Martin. They have better stuff.
Yeah. No, look, I get what you're saying, but at the end of the day, how can you do that if you can't run the ball? That's what I'm – so, again, you're in theory. I agree with you 100%.
I think Texas is going to have a lot more success than you think running the ball against
And if they do,
I think matchup styles make fights, all right? And I'm just seeing – I've seen this A&M team kind of get shoved to it a little bit, and also they bounce back. But I'm telling you, Texas will be able to run the ball on Texas A&M.
Well, Blaine, to your point, what I really think this game's going to come down to, if we're being honest, because I actually think both defenses are going to do a pretty good job stopping the run. I think this comes down to which, and if you look at Sark and Colin Klein, the OC for A&M, they love the quick, get the ball out, spit it out to the perimeter. Who can tackle in space? One-on-one in the perimeter. When they line up in stacks outside at wide receiver, who can get off that initial block and go tackle the guy at the line of scrimmage or behind on the now screen? Who on the bubble screen is going to leverage it right to make that guy kick it back inside or cut it back inside to the safety or the help that's coming on the inside? I actually think that's what you're going to see. I'd be willing to bet that either Texas or A&M, one of the two, the first play of the game will be a now screen or a quick spit out to either Ryan Wingo for Texas or Casey Concepcion, or if Craver's healthy, Craver out there. That's what I think we're going to see. And to be honest with you, I wonder, Do you pitch backwards a little bit here, Cone? If you're Texas, do you maybe take some shots early to Ryan Wingo? Maybe you connect. Maybe they're just a threat. You're willing to throw them. Maybe it's a whole shot against cover 2 if you're liking it or whatever, to soften up that A&M front 7 to allow you to be able to start running the ball and achieve that balance we're talking about.
Well, Texas throwing on early downs and what you call pitching backwards is kind of their standard operating procedure already, at least for this season. Now, I remember, look, that playoff game a year ago when they hosted Clemson and rushed for 300 yards, like this just isn't that team. Now, to Blaine's point, like if Texas can run the ball, especially between the tackles, that's what I'm talking about, then that's going to be news to me, and they're going to need every bit of that, I think, to beat this Texas A&M team. But to your point, the creativity with which they run the football is something that, that still counts towards the run game. End around with Ryan Wingo, spitting out the quick screen, which still counts as passing yards. But again, tunnel screens, extension of the run game, all that kind of stuff. That's what I've been thinking of Texas from a running game standpoint this year. And that's kind of their standard operating procedure. So I don't know how much you're going to catch Texas A&M off guard in that regard. But to your point earlier, Jake, whatever you do and whatever scheme you go in with, you need to impose your physicality in a game like this, especially early. This isn't one of those ones where you can all of a sudden halfway through the third or into the fourth, then start to impose some physicality. It needs to be 4 quarters of that for both teams, because if someone comes into the first half and they're just kind of limping in from a physical standpoint, like the other team is not going to let you come back in this game.
And if you're, if you're Texas, at the end of the day, if you got to run Arch 25 times in this game because it's working, why not?
Yeah.
It's the Bourbon Bowl. Yeah. You can't hold anything back, to quote the great Dan Fouts. So there's no tomorrow, right? At least at this point, we think, outside of a really good bowl game, which I think Texas is going to play in either way. But if it's working, we can truly get a hat on a hat, then you go do that. There can't be any, let's not run them too much or this, that, or the other. Guys, the last thing I want to hit on, and look, make sure you're subscribed. If you're not, what are you doing? Wake up. It's college football. It's rivalry week. But the field goal kicking, because I think in the red zone, it's going to be tough sledding. And this game could legitimately come down to who can make field goals. You look at Mason Shipley for Texas, hasn't missed an extra point, 16 to 20 on field goals. He's got a long of 53. He is only 1 of 4 from 50 plus. But again, that's not nuts. It's harder to make longer kicks. Again, you don't have to be a genius to know that. Then on the A&M side, right, you've got Randy Bond, who's only been 11 of 18. Now, look, Jared Zirkle's come in. He's made 17 to 18 extra points, 3 of 4 field goals. His long, though, is only 39. Randy Bond has been a disaster this year. He's 11 of 18, which is a 61% make percentage, which isn't great. He's really struggled from 40 and beyond. He's 5 of 8 from in between 40 to 49, and he's 0 of 3 from 50. So if this comes down to a 50-yard field goal, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't feel great about either. But do we feel like Texas may have the kicking advantage here?
Yeah, it just feels like this is going to come down to a field goal. And what more would we want? Texas versus Texas A&M, with Texas A&M having to hit a field goal to go to the SEC championship game. Sign me up for that.
All right, Blaine, you got anything before we get out of here and get some more of these breakdowns?
Feels like an overtime type of game, I'm going to be honest.
Even better.
And again, we're going to make our picks Wednesday. We have a very special guest that, if you like this show, I know you watch his show, and we're going to break it down even more and make our picks. So make sure you're locked into Crain & Company. Hit that subscribe button. Let's get to 200,000 or die trying.